Hello and welcome to this episode of Inside the Piranha Club with me, Rebecca Clancy.
And me, Ben Hunt.
And we are still missing Markman Bryans, who is still having issues with his internet. He messaged to say he was piggybacking off someone else's internet, which sounded all slightly ropey, and basically he's not able to join us. But he had a message for us, which is George Russell is going to be the world champion and it's coming home. We are recording this on the Monday after the British Grand Prix, which we'll get into, but obviously England, they beat Mexico, which I'll be honest, I wasn't expecting. I didn't stay up and watch it because I thought they'd lose. Also, I'm not actually English, so I wasn't really that invested in it. So I went to bed, but I was very happy to wake up to see that they won 3-2. And Ben, you are very tired because you did stay up, didn't you?
Yeah, I stayed awake. I love football and I love the World Cup. This is the first World Cup where I've not actually been employed as a sports journalist for a national newspaper, so it's quite rare to be able to sit and enjoy the football for what it's worth. And I love Mexico City. I love the people.
Love it.
The last time I was in the Azteca Stadium, it was in 2017 watching the Paul McCartney gig, and the atmosphere for that was fantastic. And just watching it last night, watching that game unfold was just so cool. Mega sporting spectacle, wasn't it? Really good
It
fun.
was. I watched the Brazil-Norway game and that was absolutely brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Loved it. I thought all the chatter about the altitude in Mexico City was utter nonsense. Bearing in mind, as F1, we go there every single year. I go to the gym when I'm there. The drivers are there for about 3 days before they have to get in the car because they come straight from Austin. It all felt slightly nonsense, didn't it?
Yeah, a little bit overblown. I think the hostilities were more of a concern than the actual, the hostilities of the crowd. Not saying they're nasty, but certainly very loud. And probably the referee was one of the biggest things to overcome. Rather than the altitude. Look, it was a great performance from England. It topped off a really, really enjoyable sporting weekend. We were both at Silverstone, and we really enjoyed it, didn't we? It was a good watch.
Do you know what? I've never seen anything like it. I've been going to Silverstone for more years than I can count on my hands now. And 564,000 people were through.
464,000 million people, it felt like.
Yeah, I've never, honestly, the scale of it, and that's the fans, it was the hospitality. The paddock on Thursday alone, which is a media day, literally nothing happens on a Thursday. They had 72,000 fans through the gate and you couldn't move in the paddock and there's nothing happening. I mean, yes, okay, the drivers are around because we're going to our different media sessions, but honestly, I've never seen anything like it, which obviously led to it being impossible to actually get out. That was a disaster.
Yeah.
How was it last night? Because I actually had to come home on Saturday night, so I wasn't there for the race at the end. I was there for 3 days, but not the 4. I presume it was a disaster getting out last night, was it?
No, it was fine, actually. Went out the secret way via the cops' tunnel. Try not to run anyone over, so sorry anyone that got beeped. Well, it's one of those things. But no, I thought the one day was really bad, wasn't it? Friday, that was chock-a-block.
Friday was horrendous, yeah.
And it took like an hour to get out of the circuit from the wings, so very, very slow progress. And deeply embarrassing for Formula One that that's the case. But, look, there's so many people there, mainly hospitality in that infield now.
But can you imagine if you're paying thousands and thousands of pounds for a ticket? One, you're queuing to get up on the double-decker buses to shuttle you around the inner field. And then you can't, when you were then trying to get out of the track, you can't get, it must be absolutely horrendous. You're thinking I've paid some people are paying 10, 15 grand for these tickets.
Yeah, crazy sums. And look, I think there's always lessons to be learned, but how on earth can you do it any different? It's an airfield in the middle of nowhere with no station nearby, no hotel nearby. There's really nothing else they can do. They should have stuck
they could open the track so we could get out.
They should have stuck the HS2 via Silverstone, shouldn't they? The rail network that they're building up there, taking forever. But no, it's
or maybe when Andy Burnham finally becomes Prime Minister, he'll do it.
What, like a little bit of a detour?
Just he's obsessed with HS2, isn't he? So maybe we can have a word.
No politics, Beck. We can't do politics here.
Well, we do the politics of F1, but maybe not the politics of this government. Right, well, let's get into it, shall we? Charles Leclerc won.
Politics of F1 was quite interesting from the weekend, which we will get into.
We're definitely going to get to that. So Charles Leclerc won at Silverstone in what ended up being a thrilling and controversial ending to the race. Antonelli did not finish, and he has seen his championship lead cut to just 25 points, with his Mercedes teammate George Russell in second. Lewis Hamilton in the Ferrari stalking closely behind them, just 32 points behind Kimi Antonelli. It was a great race. So, as I say, Leclerc won, Antonelli second, Hamilton third. Not the winner that people wanted. A slightly irritating winner, if I can say it. Not as in a person. I really like Charles Leclerc as a person, but I kind of not really involved in the championship, so didn't, on a day where the championship leader isn't scoring points, you wanted it to either be Russell or Hamilton. But let's just talk about the overview quickly of the race. What did you make of it?
I've been a fan of this new set of regulations, and the Thursday all the drivers were talking very negative about how bad it would be. And I think I was pleasantly surprised by the fact it wasn't as bad as they had feared, and Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen have both admitted they kind of got it wrong, and that it was better than expected. So that was good. I think the end was disappointing. It did for the first time feel like there was a little bit of a lull in the action, which
it did.
I haven't felt that anywhere else really this season. I think the intensity has pretty much been throughout the race. So that was a little bit.
That was round 9.
Yeah, exactly. Unfortunately, it didn't throw up the drama that it usually does, which is unusual for Silverstone. I think back to Guan Yu Zhou's big crash. I think to Max and Lewis crashing. I think to the tyres exploding one year. I think to Lewis Hamilton crossing the line on only 3 wheels one year. Silverstone usually delivers a grandstand finish. This time around, it didn't, and that's the talking point.
Right, so shall we start with the end? Let's start at the end.
I think we have to because that is the overriding theme for me.
Yeah, it is. So sadly, while the 175,000 people at the track and the millions more watching on TV were screaming for the race to restart, we did finish under a safety car. We were told via a message on the TV that the safety car would be in this lap, which we all thought was going to give us a 1-lap shootout. Lewis Hamilton in third was on those fresh, soft tyres. George Russell hadn't pitted under the safety car, which had come out as a result of Max Verstappen crashing with 4 laps to go. And it was all a bit of a mess, and as it turned out, the safety car stayed out and the checker flag fell with no more racing to be had. The FIA sent a message in our media group afterwards stating that the safety car period regulation, Article B5.13.5, states that 1 lap must be completed following the unlapping procedure. This process was followed by race operations. The safety car in this lap message was displayed erroneously due to a software error. Computer says no, isn't it?
Look, it's ironic, isn't it? It's all Abu Dhabi 21, but Lewis on the receiving end again. Ironically, Nicholas Latifi back at the British Grand Prix, first return
so
to a
random,
race since
DJing
21.
in the pop-up hotel.
Yes, selling his half-strength alcoholic beverage. Very, very interesting, very random. But yes, good to see Latifi back. But circumstances not great. Look, it was the letter of the law that the stewards had followed. I think the issue was the message popping up by mistake. Software error. We've had human error. Michael Massey. We've had software error now. British Grand Prix. It's just a little bit disappointing that it finished that way. That's how the Abu Dhabi race should have finished in 21.
It should have. But do the regulations need changing? Because effectively what that message is actually saying in English is the unlapped cars hadn't actually caught the back of the pack yet, so they needed another lap to catch up so that their races weren't hampered, obviously. But actually, is there a bit of kind of common sense needed somewhere that actually or perhaps the lapped cars, when they get picked up by the safety car, that's when that happens rather than, they just drop back and let the other cars come through. Or the reshuffle needs to happen while the safety car is still out rather than so that you don't lose 2 laps effectively to the unlapping process. It just all felt a bit of a mess.
Yeah, maybe a refinement of the rules, but yeah, mess is definitely the correct way to describe it. I read some of the stuff in the papers today, and lots of people, it's a shambles, it's this, that, and the other. It's hugely embarrassing. Like, on one hand, F1 has just put on a massive sold out event with like sponsors and brands and people falling out the hospitality units. It couldn't have gone any more better from that point of view.
And the
And
weather.
yet then and the weather, and then they're laughing all the way, and then on the very last lap then that happens. And it kind of leaves a sour taste. Does it overshadow the whole experience for those people? Probably not. um the people who are most bothered about it are the people that work in it and care about it and see it week after week. So it's the journalists that are unhappy with that outcome. And obviously, I would imagine Lewis Hamilton a little bit frustrated because he would have been in good position to fight for certainly second place, maybe a win on those tyres. So I think the romance in me would like to have seen it restarted, or safety car in, and had that final lap showdown. And seeing Hamilton win his home race for Ferrari would have been a special occasion. So take nothing away from Charles Leclerc. He was a relieved man to get that one off his back.
Hasn't won a race since October 2024. That was a big win for him, a must win.
Absolutely huge. Just when the tide had begun to turn against him, like struggling with setup, struggling seeing his teammate get the better of him, struggling seeing his teammate happy. A happy Hamilton is something that's a force of nature. You can't bet against it. And he came into the British Grand Prix all smiles, very relaxed. And I thought he was going to be on for a good weekend. So the fact that he left in third place and disappointed with third shows you how much potential he thought he had at the weekend.
Well, he also, let's not forget, it was a sprint weekend. It's easy for us to just talk about Sunday, but he was obviously on pole for the sprint race on Saturday. Didn't end up winning it. I actually thought watching that race, Kimi Antonelli got past him so easily. For me, at that moment in time, it felt like a real momentum shift, or almost even bigger than that, in the sense that, was this it for the season? Was Kimi Antonelli now just going to run away with it? We have to talk about Mercedes, because reliability is now a huge, huge problem. Antonelli hasn't finished 2 of the last 3 races, which means his 66-point lead, as it once was, is now down to just 25 points. There's still an incredibly long way to go in this season. We're expecting more races, well, Bahrain or Saudi, to be shoehorned back in at the end of the year somehow. But for Mercedes, this is a huge problem, because what they have effectively done is opened the door to Ferrari coming in and not just fighting for the Drivers' Championship, but also the Constructors.
Yeah, and I think there's a bit of a question mark over a few things with Mercedes. McLaren, a Mercedes customer, they're not happy with the engine that they've got at the moment in terms of the performance. There's a few niggling things. What was supposed to be, coming into a strong year and certainly got off in the right way, now seems to have a few hairline cracks in the organisation, a few fractures. And, once you apply the pressure, then those things tend to blow apart. So is that what we're seeing? Could it feed into a team coming into the mix like Ferrari and winning the Constructors' Championship? Could happen. It could happen. I think it's too much for McLaren to get back into this fight, but I think certainly, Ferrari are very much in this. Red Bull, I think that they've got quite a lot of work to do as well to be back in the race.
Yeah, so Mercedes currently on 333 points, Ferrari on 255, McLaren on 179, and Red Bull back on 128. Let's just stay with Mercedes, though, because George Russell... luck finally fell his way, let's say. Mercedes chose not to pit him under that safety car. They rightly did the opposite of what Ferrari did. Ferrari called in Hamilton. Russell chose to stay out and then just pipped that second place. If we had restarted, I don't think there's any doubt Lewis Hamilton would have caught him, but we didn't. We ended under the safety car, so he claimed that second. But he didn't ever look that comfortable all weekend, did he? And even though the gap is now down to 25 points, there's just something, it's still not sitting quite right, is it?
No. It's just not working, is it? And, Antonelli didn't finish the race, but he was comfortably quicker than George all weekend. So, he's got his work cut out, hasn't he? He's under pressure.
Yeah, he is. He just didn't. I was in the pen on Thursday and listening to him talk, and he just kept giving the same answer. Whatever question you asked him, he just gave you the same answer, just slightly phrased in a
what
different
was it?
way. Oh, just about how he's been working on himself and how he's been looking in his toolbox, and he's got a few new tricks now. You know, three races ago, he would never have won in Austria, but now he's starting to understand a bit more. You know, blah. It all felt a bit lip service, if I'm totally honest. Great to see him in second. I really, really, he's such a nice guy. I would love to see him up there fighting properly. But even with that second place finish, it just doesn't feel like he is. Let's move on to Red Bull, because Max Verstappen is not a happy bunny. He has crashed out for the second race in a row, utterly scathing about this effing car, effing disaster. The rumour mill of him moving to McLaren has turned into warp speed, it feels like. We know that he's had talks with the team. Raymond Van Meulen, his manager, and Max as well also went along for the talks, which I thought was interesting. It wasn't just his manager who went. Yes, I know the counter-argument, which has been said all weekend, is everyone's talking to everyone. But there's just something a bit different about this one, isn't there?
Yeah, I think it was an uncomfortable weekend for Red Bull for a number of reasons. I think Christian Horner's return on Sunday was like a hero's return to the paddock, in the way that he was greeted by the FIA president and Stefano Domenicali, you know, the president of Formula One, and the way that the three of them walked onto the grid, and also the way that Horner was greeted by his former engineers and mechanics, you know, all of them hugging him, and sort of, you know, there seemed to be a friendship, you know, which has obviously existed for years, and it hadn't dissipated. It was kind of like they'd seen an old friend. It was quite nice to watch, but it also provides a timely reminder, probably for Laurent Mekies, who's inherited that position, of, you know, the influence and sway that Horner had. And I don't believe that Mekies is having that at the moment. You know, people leaving, senior people leaving the team. It feels like a big exodus, and Verstappen must be looking around thinking, crikey, who's next to go? One of Red Bull's strengths was always about strength in depth and having people ready-made. If someone was to leave, there'd be a ready-made replacement to fit in, whether it be a mechanic or an engineer or whatnot. At the moment, it's very difficult to see who they've got left, and who's behind in reserve, because, you know, the turnover is so high. And, you know, I went into the motorhome there at Red Bull. You know, I didn't recognise anyone. You know, it just feels like all the faces have gone. Loads of new people, and Verstappen's probably thinking the same thing. And, you know, he's seeing a few of them pop up at McLaren. You know, he sees the potential in that car. You know, he's within his rights to see what contracts are available. I understand that by you know, not scoring points at the weekend, it means that he can't be second in the championship by the halfway point, which activates a clause in his contract whereby he's free to negotiate with other teams. So let's see what happens.
And the McLaren thing is interesting, because it's not just anybody popping up over there from Red Bull. It's Rob Marshall, the chief designer. It's Will Courtney, who was the Red Bull head of strategy. And I think this is the crucial one, Giampiero Lambiase, who is his race engineer, who at some point, there's still the leave dates haven't been agreed. He's also moving to McLaren. And also, I think with McLaren, when you look at it and you think, do you know what this can offer him? It's not just an F1 seat. Zach Brown has teams in every racing series, it feels like. So if he turns around one day, Max Verstappen, and says, I want to race in Le Mans, Zach Brown's going to say to him, I've got a team for that. I want to race in Bathurst. I've got a team for that. I want to do the Indy 500. I've got a team for that. And we know that Max Verstappen likes racing in the different categories. And then suddenly, you know, for me, it's Max actually going to the meeting. It's not just sending Raymond. So clearly, this isn't the first meeting. Clearly, there have been other conversations that have had, because Max wouldn't be there for the first one. That's just not how it works. So actually, I'm starting to think that this could be a goer.
And you know, he may even still be able to preserve his links with Red Bull as the parent company. When Mark Webber left and raced the Porsche, he had a Red Bull backing. You know, he had the sponsorship on his helmet. Maybe it's something that he's able to port. Obviously, it would mean the end of his F1 involvement with Red Bull, but, you know, he can still keep that relationship with the big brand. So Look, it's in his interests to go and talk to people, and I think Red Bull would be really naive to think that he wouldn't be looking anywhere else, given what's gone on over the last 12 months or so. The exodus is phenomenal, and I'm
And
just not
continues.
convinced, and continues, and I'm just not convinced that the man in charge, as nice as he is, can stop it.
No.
And I don't know if there's enough faith that he is able to turn that around, stop the exodus and rebuild.
Yeah, I do agree with you. Let's while we're talking about Red Bull, let's talk about Horner on the grid.
Mm.
Nothing really more to say about him returning other than he did an interview with the Times saying that he would like to come back, but not just in any job. Nothing particularly new in it. Nice interview, but nothing particularly new in it.
No.
Him basically confirming what we've all been saying, which is he wants to come home back as a wants to come home. He wants to come back, or what he probably thinks is his home in
It's
F1.
coming home, Beck. That's
It's
what it
coming
is.
home. I know. If
It's
MMB was
coming
here
home.
now, he'd just
Yeah.
be singing at me, wouldn't he? He wants a stake in a team. He wants to be an owner. He wants to be financially benefiting from this incredible success that F1 is currently having. He doesn't just want to be an employee. He wants to have not just say, as he did as CEO and team principal at Red Bull Racing, but he wants to put his money where his mouth is, as it were, which is why there are all these talks about him leading this consortium to buy a stake in Alpine. But what was your reading from his attendance at the weekend as to when we might see him back? Because his gardening leave is over, so he
Yep.
is now free to return to the sport.
Yeah, and there was a talk about September, wasn't there, with regards to the shares for Alpine. I think that date looks unlikely. So it would probably be something now for next season. Look, I don't know. I'm not sure where it's gonna happen. I can look at the grid and I can see potential places for him. Williams is an opportunity for investment, and to lead that team. James Vowles under increasing pressure there to turn things around.
They've got it really
Aston
wrong this year, haven't
Martin,
they?
yeah, Aston Martin. Like that is an embarrassment where they're at the moment. They
They
would
need a
need to
proper team
be.
principal, not
They
Adrian
do.
Newey.
They do, and a lot of shaking up. But again, that is a lot of moving parts. And then, you know, you look at the Red Bull situation, you do wonder, and this is, just me looking at the bigger situation. No, but what happens with Red Bull? Do they need two teams in Formula One now? I mean, you know,
Oh, I see. Could he buy
is
Racing Bulls?
yeah, is one a headache?
Oh,
Could
interesting
could could
point,
they
yeah.
look to sell the second one? It's certainly a big return on investment. Given the value of Formula One now, so I do think there are options, and one of the suggestions was BYD, the electric car maker. I don't think that has legs just
No, I
yet.
don't. The Chinese car maker, no, I definitely don't.
But I know obviously that he does want to get back in, but there's a number of potentials. I'm just not sure how it all shakes out.
Right, well, we are going to have to wait and see, aren't we? Okay,
Mm,
Ben, we were talking about this over
yeah,
the weekend. It's time for your
yeah,
1 minute moan. Um,
yeah.
and it's
And
a
your minute.
shame that this is the subject because ultimately it had the
Mm.
potential to be fantastic. It was all a bit cringe.
Yeah,
You can
yeah,
explain.
the Lego drivers parade. Look, I really do. I used to be in the Lego club when I was a kid. I had the badges, and I've still got tons of Lego in my house. Um, Big fan of the product. Big fan of the sponsorship with Formula One. Love what it's doing. The whole karting thing, getting the drivers out there. Yeah, let's see how it goes. I thought Miami was a really good activation, and the fact that they were two, tandem cars, if you like. Everyone got their own go-kart. Everyone was out there. The issue was a certain someone who injected himself into the drivers' parade, and that is the FIA president. What on earth was he doing? What was he thinking? Putting himself there. This was very clearly a moment for the drivers and Formula One, and to wave to the fans, and yet he's going around in a suit with his sunglasses, looking like the Thug Life character, the meme,
Yep.
waving. And I'm just like, this is just so awkward. Like, why are you doing this? And of course, then he goes across the gravel and beaches the car, and that was all very embarrassing. Look, my moan is, I wish he would stick out of things. I think a few people probably agree with me. Look, I know he was uncontested. I know he's the president. I know he's doing things that people don't agree with. Formula One still in a good place. I think you've got to get your own house in order a lot with the decision making and the mistakes. Let's cut all that out, and then you can go around in a go-kart and start waving to people, maybe. But come on, man, just leave this to the drivers. This was their moment. This was a Lego activation. This wasn't his moment to shine.
It was so weird. He's never been on a driver's parade ever before, and then suddenly he comes out for this. He is so desperate to be in the limelight, isn't he?
Yeah.
It was incredibly cringe, and then, as you say, he beached it. And he'll tell anyone who listens he used to be a rally driver. That's his thing. Yeah, no thanks. Next time, just stay out of it. Also, doesn't need to go and congratulate the drivers at the end when they're still like desperately trying to get a bottle of water down them. Yeah, not for me. Thanks very much. But I think overall, a great weekend. It's sad how it ended. It is sad, but actually, in my mind, when I look back at this weekend, my thoughts and my memories will be the scale of it, the size of it, the weather. I can't believe it held out. It was actually really nice, and it was just a lot of fun. It's just such a good classic circuit. The drivers love it. We're at round 9 now. We still don't really know what the pecking order is. People keep saying Mercedes are fastest, but actually Ferrari, Lewis Hamilton had the top speed. Okay, Antonelli got the fastest lap, but Lewis Hamilton had the top speed. And they're faster in the slow corners. Obviously, Mercedes were quicker on the straights. Generally, that they kind of did better in sector 1 and 2. I just still don't feel like we really know what's going on here. There's still so much to play with, and Antonelli isn't running off with this championship. I think F1's in quite rude health as it stands at the moment.
Ah, you said rude health. I was thinking about rude health. That was what I was saying, and I've just Googled. I think back to British Grand Prix around 2017. It is 2017 when they had announced that they were going to activate a break clause in the contract with Formula One, and they couldn't afford the repayments because they was going up every year by an incremental amount. It might have been 10%, 5%, whatever it was, and it was the cost of paying Formula One for the right to stage the race was higher than what they got from the ticket revenues. And, seeing your home race in a little bit of a dire straits like that was quite dispiriting. We were hoping for big things, and, we obviously had Hamilton in his pomp. Jenson Button still racing at the time.
Yeah, he was at that point.
The whole, British motorsport scene was looking healthy, but for whatever reason, we couldn't make the financials work from a British perspective, and that was a shame. And you go to the concept of, oh man, we could lose the British Grand Prix. What a travesty that would be. And then fast forward to this weekend, and you've got record attendance, sold out, gazillions being spent on hospitality. We're saying that there's far too many people there. The change is phenomenal. Formula One is in a really, really good position, and fair play to Silverstone. They stuck at it, put on a good show. The fan zones were fantastic. I think the live acts were great.
Chase and Stasis, love Chase and Stasis.
Well, Richard Ashcroft, good bands and good artists. It was a festival. It wasn't really a motorsport event. It was much bigger than that, and I can see why fans will be thinking about renewing their tickets. When they get home and unpacking their luggage from the weekend, and think it really was a great weekend. Really good.
It was. That record attendance is not just for the British Grand Prix, it's for any F1 race ever. Stuart Pringle, the CEO at Silverstone, has done a fantastic job with his team. A lot of credit goes to them. Nick Reed, Katie Tyler, all of them, they've done an amazing job. Rachel James. Fantastic team up there at Silverstone. And I, for one, I remember that 2017 story. I remember we all got called to a press conference at Silverstone.
Yeah.
We were genuinely concerned that it would be the end of the British Grand Prix, certainly at that track in Northamptonshire, which is normally the coldest place in the entire world because it's a former airfield and it's windy, and the wind is always bitterly coming down from the Arctic, it seems. But no, fantastic what they've done. It felt like a festival. I don't actually think, yes, from a sporting perspective, the safety car wasn't great, but as a general weekend, which, let's face it, that's what Liberty Media came in to do. It's supposed to be like a festival. That's how they want their races to be.
Yep.
And honestly, no one does it better than Silverstone.
Yep. No, I agree.
And certainly not Spa, which is where we go next. We have a week's break. I am not a fan of this racetrack. It makes me incredibly uncomfortable every time we go racing there. I still, even with the tweaks, don't think it's fit for purpose anymore. But we will do a full preview. Apologies, we didn't get to do the preview for the British Grand Prix. Issues with logistics, travel. We're also not allowed to record within the circuit, which proved our undoing in the end. Actually, we just couldn't make it work. So I apologise for that.
Isn't that ridiculous? Isn't that ridiculous, Beck? You know, in this day and age that we're not even able to record a podcast to talk about Formula One and, you know, say how good the British Grand Prix was from within the circuit. Absolutely madness.
But we will be back to preview the Belgian Grand Prix, talk all things Spa, and also just continue what is turning out to be an absolutely brilliant F1 season. So in the meantime, if you have enjoyed this podcast, please do rate and review us. Share with your friends. Please send in your comments and questions. We've actually had a few come through. I'm going to put them all together and we'll include them in the preview that we do for Belgium. But in the meantime, thanks very much for listening.
Thank you.